I think back to the morning when everything began to unravel, a day that started like any other. My name is Tom, and I've been married to Jessica for 6 years. We had a pretty solid relationship, or at least that's what I believed. We lived in a small town where everyone knew each other, and we had a comfortable routine. I worked as an IT manager, while Jessica was a part-time fitness instructor. We shared a love for adventure and often talked about traveling the world someday. But lately, something felt off. It began subtly. Jessica started taking more late-night yoga classes. At first, I thought it was just her trying to get fit or blow off steam. I mean, we all have our hobbies, right? But soon enough, I noticed little things. She'd come home smelling of cologne that wasn't mine, and there were times she'd jump on her phone the moment I walked into the room, quickly shutting it down. There were even a few weekends where she'd hang out with friends, but I'd see her social media posts where she was out and about, with guys I'd never met. I brushed it off initially, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. But then came the day I found the receipt in her purse. It was for a hotel, a nice one at that, where she claimed she was going to a wellness retreat. I never thought twice about it, but this receipt was dated for a weekend I distinctly remembered because I had planned a surprise getaway for us. I confronted her about it and she laughed it off, claiming she was just helping a friend out. My gut twisted at the thought of her lying so easily. One Friday evening she left for her retreat, and I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. After she left, I decided to dig deeper. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was piling up. I went through her phone while she was gone, and that's when I stumbled upon the text messages. They were explicit, filled with eye-rolling affection, and signed with the name Captain Jake. I felt the air leave my lungs as I read the messages between her and this guy. This Captain Jake was no ordinary person. He was the captain of a local cruise ship that made weekend trips out of the harbor. I couldn't believe my Jessica, was having an affair with a cruise ship captain. Confrontation was inevitable. When Jessica returned home, I was waiting for her. She walked in, all smiles, oblivious to the storm brewing in my heart. I dropped the bombshell of what I'd discovered. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror, and then she went into full damage control mode. "Tom, it's not what you think," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "I was just playing around. Captain Jake is just a friend." A friend? I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it. "A friend you texted dirty messages to," I shot back. She fumbled for words, each excuse sounding more ridiculous than the last. "It was just a phase, I didn't mean to hurt you," she pleaded, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal, but the truth was there, glaring at us. I felt anger bubbling up inside me, mixing with deep-seated betrayal. I was crushed, and it showed. The emotional turmoil left me reeling. I thought I knew Jessica, the girl who had once promised me the world. I felt like a fool for trusting her, for believing in the future we had talked about. The anger morphed into sadness, and for days I was a shell of a man walking around in a state of disbelief. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake, replaying memories in my mind, questioning every little moment we'd shared. I didn't want to throw it all away, but I also couldn't shake the image of her and Captain Jake together. I felt a mix of fury and heartbreak. A week passed in silence. Jessica tried to make amends, but I was too raw, too hurt to let her words penetrate the wall that was now my heart. As the days wore on, I began to realize I had two choices: continue living in this painful limbo or take control of my life. That's when the idea of revenge came to me, not the kind that would hurt her, but the sort that would liberate me. I decided to travel solo. I'd always wanted to see the world, and now seemed like the perfect opportunity. It was time for me to live my best life, and perhaps in the process, show Jessica that she'd lost something worth keeping. I started planning my escape. I researched destinations, found cheap flights, and mapped out a journey that would take me across continents. I didn't share my plans with Jessica. Instead, I kept my excitement bottled up, ready to burst forth into a new chapter of my life. I was done being the victim. I was going to live the adventure I had always dreamed of, but this time it was going to be for me. What I didn't realize was that this decision would lead me to a path of self-discovery and challenges far beyond what I had anticipated. But for now, I was focused on taking my first step away from the betrayal that had chained me for too long. After I made the decision to travel, I felt a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. I spent the next few weeks planning my itinerary, poring over travel blogs and booking flights. Each click of the mouse felt like a release from the burden Jessica had placed on my shoulders. I picked destinations that had always intrigued me, places filled with culture, adventure, and a sense of freedom. I wanted to immerse myself in experiences that were entirely my own, free from the shadow of betrayal. I booked a one-way ticket to Barcelona, Spain. It seemed perfect. The vibrant culture, the art, the architecture, and the food, everything felt like a fresh start. I would be diving headfirst into a world where I could rediscover who I was outside the confines of my marriage. I remember sitting in my favorite chair, staring at the packed suitcase next to me, and feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. The day of my departure arrived, and I barely slept the night before. My mind swirled with thoughts of Jessica, but more importantly, it buzzed with anticipation of the unknown. I didn't tell her about my plans, and I felt a sense of freedom in that secrecy. When I left, she was still in bed, blissfully unaware of the course change in my life. I slipped out quietly, closing the door behind me. The flight to Barcelona was long but full of hope. I had made a playlist for the trip that was a mix of my favorite songs and new tunes that got me pumped for the adventures ahead. As we ascended into the sky, I felt the weight of my past lift slightly. The clouds parted, revealing the sun, and I couldn't help but smile at the prospect of new beginnings. Arriving in Barcelona was exhilarating. The city was alive with energy, and I took in the sights and sounds with wide eyes. My first stop was La Sagrada Familia, and as I stood there, gazing at the intricate architecture, I felt a sense of awe that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I explored the winding streets, indulged in tapas, and even attempted to learn a few phrases in Spanish. For the first time since the affair was revealed, I felt alive. Days turned into weeks, and I explored every corner of the city. I spent afternoons at local cafes, sipping wine while sketching my surroundings in a travel journal. I wandered through markets, sampling street food, and even joined a dance class where I met a group of fellow travelers. They welcomed me with open arms, and I felt a sense of belonging that had been missing from my life. We shared laughter and stories, and I slowly began to heal. It was during one of these evenings, sitting around a table filled with new friends, that I realized how much I had been holding back in my life. I had let Jessica's actions define my happiness for far too long. As we shared our travel experiences, I began to open up about my journey, omitting the details of my marital woes but conveying the essence of my personal transformation. They encouraged me to embrace every moment and to let go of the past, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. Every now and then, memories of Jessica would invade my thoughts. I'd see a couple holding hands or sharing a laugh, and a pang of loneliness would strike deep in my gut. I missed the companionship, the shared experiences. I often wondered if she felt guilty, if she regretted what she had done. But then I'd remind myself that I was no longer the same person I was when I boarded that flight. I was growing, evolving, and learning to put myself first. As the weeks passed, I made my way to other countries, Italy, Greece, and even a bit of Morocco. Each place added layers to my journey. I climbed the cliffs of Santorini, wandered through the ruins of Rome, and haggled at bazaars in Marrakesh. I was no longer just Tom the husband. I was Tom the adventurer, the seeker. In Italy, I met an artist named Marco who invited me to his studio. He showed me how to paint, and I found solace in the strokes of the brush. Each color on the canvas was a representation of my emotions, my anger, my sadness, my hope. It was therapeutic, and after a few sessions, I realized I had created something beautiful. It was a reflection of my journey, messy and bold, yet full of potential. But the deeper I delved into this new life, the more I found myself thinking about revenge. Not the traditional sense of revenge that would hurt Jessica, but a way to show her that I was thriving without her. I wanted her to see that cheating on me didn't break me. It propelled me towards something greater. I envisioned sending her a postcard from every country I visited, each one illustrating a piece of my newfound joy. Perhaps in some twisted way, it would serve as my own version of Look What You Lost. As my travels continued, I felt a fire igniting within me, a determination to build a life that was rich in experiences, rather than one defined by heartbreak. I started to think about what I wanted in a relationship, the qualities I valued, and the kind of love I deserved. This journey was about more than just revenge. It was about rediscovering myself and understanding that I was worthy of love and happiness, no matter where I found it. I grew more excited as the weeks went by. I had a world to explore, and I was ready to embrace every moment of it. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I was no longer afraid. I was Tom, the adventurer, and I was living my best life. As I continued my journey, each new city brought fresh experiences and challenges alike. My heart was slowly transforming from one of betrayal to one of resilience. I could feel it in my bones. I was becoming someone new. One of the most remarkable moments came when I found myself in the streets of Florence, Italy. The art, the history, the sheer beauty of the place ignited a passion I hadn't realized I had buried under layers of heartbreak. One afternoon, while exploring the Uffizi Gallery, I stood in front of Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. It was as if the painting spoke to me, embodying rebirth and transformation. In that moment, I felt inspired to craft my own narrative. I realized I was not just seeking revenge against Jessica. I was reclaiming my story, my life, and my happiness. I found a small cafe nearby, the kind that had a quaint charm with old wooden tables and the smell of freshly baked pastries wafting through the air. I set up my travel journal and penned my thoughts, pouring out my feelings about the journey thus far. I reflected on how I'd allowed myself to be consumed by anger and sadness, but now I was learning to appreciate the beauty around me. I noted how I wanted to carry this newfound perspective forward, allowing it to shape my future. One evening, as I was enjoying a glass of Chianti and some pasta, I struck up a conversation with a fellow traveler named Sarah. She was from New York and had been on the road for a couple of months. We connected over our shared love for travel, and soon the conversation turned deeper. I found myself sharing pieces of my story, omitting the details of my marital issues while still conveying the essence of my transformation. Sarah listened intently, her eyes widening occasionally at my revelations. "I think you're doing something amazing," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "You're taking control of your narrative. Many people would wallow in despair, but you're out here living your best life. That's something to be proud of." Her words resonated deeply. I realized that I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. We continued to share stories, exchanging laughter and ideas late into the night. By the end of the evening, we had forged a connection, and it felt good to have someone to share this journey with. We became travel buddies for a few days, exploring Florence together until we had to part ways. As I traveled from city to city, I embraced new adventures, each one adding a layer to the tapestry of my life. I took a cooking class in Rome where I learned how to make authentic pasta, and I was completely immersed in the process, chopping garlic, kneading dough, and infusing flavors. I felt joy bubbling in my chest as I created something delicious, something real. It was during my time in Italy that I decided to execute my subtle revenge plan. I began sending Jessica postcards from each destination I visited, as I had initially envisioned. They were filled with snippets of my experiences, capturing the essence of the places I'd visited, the people I'd met, and the joy I was discovering in my newfound freedom. The first postcard was from Florence. I wrote about the beauty of the city, mentioning how the sunsets painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. I described the pasta I had made in a cooking class, savoring each bite, and how liberating it felt to create art in the kitchen. I casually signed it with, "Wish you were here, but maybe not." I made sure to send the postcards out with just enough time for them to reach her before I moved on to my next city. Each postcard was crafted with care, and I found a strange sense of satisfaction in knowing she'd received them while I was off experiencing life without her. It was a small way to show her that, despite what she had done, I was thriving. The The responses were a mix of confusion and guilt, and I could sense her growing regret through her texts. Each time I received a reply, I felt a surge of empowerment. She would ask about my travels, expressing both curiosity and remorse. "I miss you," she'd text, followed by a string of emojis that felt hollow compared to the adventure I was having. My heart didn't flutter at her words. Instead, I felt a sense of pride that I was no longer tied to those needs. I was moving forward. By the time I reached Greece, I was fully immersed in my new lifestyle. I hopped from island to island, soaking up the sun and enjoying the ocean's embrace. I climbed up the cliffs of Santorini, where I stood on the edge, looking out at the Aegean Sea. In that moment, I felt invincible. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was redefining my identity with every step I took. I attended local festivals, danced under the stars, and let the music wash over me. On one particular night, I joined in a spontaneous celebration with locals who welcomed me into their fold. We danced until dawn, voices raised in laughter and song. In those moments of pure joy, the memories of Jessica faded into the background, and I felt a sense of liberation that I had craved for so long. As I stood on that cliff, overlooking the vastness of the sea, I made a vow to myself. I would never allow anyone to define my worth again. I would seek out love and adventure on my terms. I had learned that life is not just about enduring pain, it's about embracing the beauty that comes after the storm. The postcards continued to flow, and though they were small gestures, they were significant markers of my journey. With each one I sent, I felt more empowered, more alive. I was no longer the victim of Jessica's betrayal. I was the architect of my own happiness. I was writing the most incredible chapter of my life, and I was ready to see where it would take me next. As my travels continued to unfold, I found myself increasingly comfortable in my own skin. The adventures had shaped me, allowing me to gain confidence in ways I never thought possible. I was savoring the world, each experience teaching me something new about myself. Months slipped by, and soon I found myself in Thailand, a place I had always dreamed of visiting, known for its vibrant culture and stunning landscapes. Arriving in Bangkok was an assault on the senses: bright colors, the sounds of bustling markets, and the tantalizing sense of street food wafting through the air. I had heard countless stories about the city, and I was eager to dive in. I dropped my bags at a guest house and set off to explore. The streets were alive with a frenetic energy that invigorated me. One evening, after a day of visiting temples and indulging in local delicacies, I joined a cooking class designed to teach tourists how to create authentic Thai dishes. The class was filled with travelers from all over the world, and I found myself engrossed in the process, chopping vegetables, stirring fragrant curries, and learning the subtle balance of spices. There's something incredibly empowering about cooking, a primal connection to the earth and the people around me. I reveled in the camaraderie, sharing laughter as we all struggled to perfect our dishes. After the class, as we enjoyed our creations, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Maya, who was traveling solo as well. We exchanged stories, and I felt an instant connection with her. She was vivacious, with a spirit that reminded me of the adventure I had been on. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something beyond friendship. As the sun set, painting the sky with a golden hue, Maya suggested we explore the city's famous night markets together. I agreed, and as we wandered through the stalls, trying everything from skewered meats to mango sticky rice, I couldn't help but laugh at how liberating it felt to be enjoying life so fully. We strolled through the vibrant chaos, bantering about our experiences and sharing our dreams for the future. Over the next few days, Maya and I became inseparable. We explored the ancient ruins of Ayutthaya, traversed the jungles of Chiang Mai, and even attended a traditional Thai festival where we released lanterns into the night sky. With every adventure, I felt a growing connection with her, a sense of companionship that I had sorely missed during my tumultuous months. One night, as we sat on a beach in Koh Samui, watching the stars twinkle above us, Maya turned to me and said, "You know, It's amazing how much we can heal when we let ourselves be open to new experiences. Her words struck a chord, and I nodded in agreement. I realized that I had not only traveled to escape my past, but to rediscover myself and the possibilities that lay ahead. But as our connection deepened, so did the complexities of my feelings about Jessica. I had been sending those postcards, sharing snippets of my adventures, but now I had to confront the reality of moving forward. I had been using the postcards as a form of catharsis, a way to show Jessica that I was thriving, but I knew I couldn't keep holding onto that past forever. One evening, after we returned from a day of exploring a nearby island, I received a message from Jessica. She texted me about how she had been thinking a lot about us, sharing details of her life since our separation, including how she had been seeking therapy to understand her actions. The message was filled with regret, and she expressed a desire to reconnect and talk. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and even a glimmer of nostalgia, but I knew I had to be honest about where I was in my life. I typed out a response, carefully choosing my words. Jessica, I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm on a different path now. I've spent months discovering who I am, and while I don't discount what we had, I can't go back to that life. I'm not the same person I was when we were together. Pressing send felt like an anchor lifting off my chest. It was freeing to assert my new identity and reclaim my narrative. I continued my conversation with Maya that night, sharing what had just happened. To my surprise, she didn't shy away from my past. Instead, she encouraged me to embrace my journey, both the good and the painful. We talked late into the night, and I found solace in her understanding. As the weeks progressed, my bond with Maya grew stronger. We enjoyed each other's company, exploring hidden gems in Thailand and sharing our dreams and fears. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt an authentic connection with someone who saw me for who I was becoming, not who I had been. Yet the postcards kept coming from Jessica, each one more desperate and remorseful than the last. I could sense her attempts to reach out and reconnect, but the more I learned about myself, the less I wanted to revisit that chapter. I had come too far to look back now. One day, while sitting on the beach with Maya, I made a decision. I would write one final postcard to Jessica, not as an act of vengeance, but as a way to officially close the door on our past. I penned my thoughts carefully, expressing gratitude for the memories we shared, but also stating clearly that I had moved on and was embracing a new life filled with adventure and possibility. It felt right to end it on a note of peace, allowing both of us to find closure. After I sent the postcard, I felt lighter. I was no longer burdened by the weight of my past. I was stepping into a new chapter with Maya by my side. The journey had transformed me, and now I was ready to embrace whatever came next. I had learned to let go of the pain, to find solace in the beauty of new beginnings, and to cherish the connections that uplifted me. As I stood on that beach, hand in hand with Maya, I felt hope swell within me. I was a man reborn, taking each step in confidence, no longer defined by betrayal but by the incredible journey I had chosen for myself. The weeks rolled into months, and my life with Maya became a beautiful tapestry of shared experiences and adventures. We explored the landscapes of Southeast Asia, diving into the culture and history of each place we visited. From the ancient temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia to the bustling streets of Hanoi, we created memories that felt like the beginning of a new chapter. Maya brought out a side of me that had long been dormant, a sense of playfulness and spontaneity that I had lost in my previous relationship. We hiked through jungles, sat by the beach at sunset, and shared long conversations over street food. Each moment was filled with laughter and joy, and I found myself falling for her in a way that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Despite the happiness I felt, I couldn't shake the lingering ghosts of my past. Jessica's postcards kept coming, and while I had sent her my final message, she continued to reach out to me. Each postcard expressed deep remorse and a desire for forgiveness. She detailed her journey, how she had been working on herself, attending therapy, and realizing the impact of her actions. While I appreciated her attempts to grow, I couldn't allow myself to get pulled back into that cycle of hurt. One day, while lounging in a cafe in Bangkok, I found myself staring at a postcard from Jessica, a photo of a beautiful sunset over the ocean. It brought back memories, some fond, some painful. I pondered how I had transformed that pain into something empowering, but I also realized that I needed to finally let go of the emotional weight she had left behind. Maya, I said, turning to her as she flipped through her phone. Can we talk about something? Of course. What's on your mind? She replied, her eyes lighting up with curiosity. I've been getting postcards from my ex. I began, trying to gauge her reaction. She's been expressing a lot of remorse and wants to reconnect. I'm not sure how to handle it. Maya listened intently, her expression thoughtful. That's tough. It's natural to feel a mix of emotions. Have you thought about what you want? I think I just want closure, I admitted. I'm worried that by responding, I'll open old wounds. I've come so far and I don't want to go back. Closure can look different for everyone, she said, her voice steady. Maybe you could write her one last note, letting her know you wish her well, but that you're moving forward. It's about you, after all. Her words struck a chord, and I realized she was right. I needed to take control of my narrative. That night, I sat down with my journal and poured out my thoughts. I wrote a letter to Jessica, acknowledging her growth and expressing my hope that she would continue on her path of healing. I emphasized that, while I appreciated the memories we shared, I was embracing my new life and had no intentions of looking back. When I sent that letter, it felt like I was finally cutting the last thread that bound me to my past. I had taken my power back, and I was ready to move forward. As the weeks rolled on, Maya and I decided to travel to Japan. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, and it felt like the perfect backdrop for new beginnings. We wandered through parks, visited temples, and soaked in the hot springs. Our relationship deepened, and I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't anticipated. I shared my fears, my hopes, and my dreams for the future. One evening, as we strolled through a vibrant street market in Kyoto, I turned to Maya. I want to be honest with you about something. I've been through a lot this past year, but what I want more than anything is to build something meaningful with you. She looked at me, her expression warm and encouraging. I feel the same way, Tom. You've opened my eyes to so much beauty in life, and I can't imagine this journey without you. In that moment, everything seemed to align. We shared a kiss under the glow of lanterns, a promise of what was to come. I realized that I was not just moving on from my past, but I was also creating a future filled with possibility. Yet, as I continued to navigate this new relationship, I couldn't ignore the emotional baggage I still carried. I had spent months healing and rediscovering myself, but I knew I had to confront any lingering issues. I suggested to Maya that we explore the concept of relationships together, discussing our boundaries, fears, and expectations. It was important for me to build a strong foundation with her, one that was free from the shadows of my past. Maya agreed, and we spent evenings talking about love, trust, and what we envisioned for our futures. It was refreshing to have these conversations, and slowly I began to peel back the layers of my heart. I shared my fears of betrayal, my desire for honesty, and how I wanted to build a relationship that was rooted in mutual respect and understanding. One night, as we sat on a rooftop overlooking the city, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I had transformed from the man who had been deeply hurt into someone ready to embrace love again. I had learned that it was okay to be vulnerable, to share my past, and to allow someone else in. But as I reveled in this newfound relationship, I still had to confront the reality of Jessica's attempts to re-enter my life. One day, while exploring a serene garden in Tokyo, I received another message from her. This time, it wasn't a postcard, it was a long email. She shared her journey in detail, expressing her desire to meet in person and talk things through. My heart raced as I read her words. After everything, was I ready to face her? Did I want to give her the opportunity to explain, to apologize in person? I was torn. Part of me felt compassion for the journey she was on, yet the other part of me screamed that I had worked too hard to find my own path to risk getting pulled back into old wounds. I turned to Maya, who was admiring the cherry blossoms. I just got an email from Jessica. She wants to meet. Maya's expression shifted to one of understanding. How do you feel about that? I'm conflicted. I feel like I should give her some closure, but I'm worried about where it might lead. I've come so far and I don't want to jeopardize what we have. Maya. Reach for my hand, squeezing it gently. You need to do what feels right for you. If it doesn't sit well with your gut, then trust that feeling. You deserve to protect the peace you've found. Her support meant the world to me, and I realized that I had someone in my corner who understood my journey and believed in my growth. As I contemplated my next steps, I knew that whatever decision I made, I would do it with intention, honoring the progress I had made and the love I was nurturing with Maya. The choice loomed ahead of me. Would I meet Jessica for this final conversation, or would I close that chapter for good? I felt a surge of determination. I would make a decision that honored my healing and my commitment to moving forward. The journey had shaped me, and now it was time to choose my next step deliberately. As I pondered Jessica's email, I felt the weight of my past pressing down on me. I had spent months rebuilding, rediscovering who I was, and embracing new adventures. Meeting her could open old wounds, but a part of me felt that closure was necessary, not for her sake but for my own peace of mind. After discussing it with Maya, I decided I would meet Jessica one last time, but I would do it on my terms. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in a park, a place I knew would be serene enough for an honest conversation. The day arrived, and as I walked to the cafe, a mix of anxiety and determination surged through me. I took a deep breath, recalling the strength I had found during my travels. I was no longer the man she had betrayed. I was someone who had learned to embrace life and the adventures it offered. When I arrived, I spotted Jessica sitting at a patio table, her posture tense as she fiddled with her hands. She looked different, somehow older and more vulnerable than I remembered. I approached her, and for a moment we simply stared at each other, both of us caught in the weight of our past. "Hey," I said, taking a seat across from her. "Thanks for meeting with me." "Thank you for agreeing to this," she replied, her voice shaky. "I've thought a lot about what happened between us. I know I hurt you deeply and I'm sorry." I nodded, allowing her to continue. "I've been working on myself. I've been in therapy trying to understand why I made those choices. I realize now how selfish I was. You were everything to me and I threw it all away." Her words hung in the air and I felt a mix of sympathy and frustration. "Jessica, I appreciate that you're taking responsibility, but it's hard to overlook the pain you caused. I've spent months rediscovering myself and finding happiness again." "I know," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I've seen your postcards and I can tell you're thriving. I'm so happy for you, but I also can't help feeling terrible about what I did." I took a moment, collecting my thoughts. I'm not here to reopen wounds or to dwell on the past. I came because I wanted to find closure for myself. I've moved on and I finally understand that I deserve happiness, whether that's with you or without you. She looked down, wiping away a tear. "I understand. I just wish I could go back and change things." "Wishing doesn't change anything," I said gently. "What's important now is moving forward. I hope you continue on your path to self-discovery and healing. It's crucial for both of us to embrace our own journeys." Jessica nodded, and I could see the regret etched on her face. "I want you to know that I'll always care about you, Tom. You were my best friend and I took that for granted." "Thank you, but I can't be that person for you anymore," I replied, feeling a sense of resolve. "I need to prioritize my own happiness and growth." With that, we shared a moment of silence, the air heavy with unspoken truths. I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me, as if a weight had been lifted. I had confronted my past, faced the woman who had caused me so much pain, and I was ready to walk away, unburdened. As we stood to leave, I extended my hand for a brief, final handshake. "I genuinely wish you the best, Jessica. I hope you find what you're looking for. Take care of yourself." She took my hand, her grip firm yet shaky. "You too, Tom. Thank you for giving me this moment." As I walked away from the cafe, I felt an overwhelming surge of empowerment. I had faced my past head-on, acknowledged the pain, and now I was free to move forward without any lingering attachments. I glanced back one last time, seeing Jessica sitting alone, and I knew this was the final chapter in that part of my life. Returning to Maya, who had given me space during the meeting, I felt lighter than I had in months. She greeted me with a warm smile, and I could see the concern in her eyes. "How did it go?" she asked. "It was good. I think I finally found closure," I said, a smile breaking across my face. "I don't feel angry anymore. I'm just ready to embrace the future." Maya took my hand, squeezing it tightly. "I'm proud of you, Tom. You handled that with so much grace." As we walked through the park, hand in hand, I felt a sense of hope and excitement for the future. I had rebuilt my life on my own terms, and now I was ready to dive into whatever came next. I was a man who had faced betrayal and emerged transformed, ready to embrace love, adventure, and everything in between. The journey had taught me invaluable lessons about trust, resilience, and the importance of self-love. I had learned that life is a series of chapters, and while some may be painful, they ultimately lead us to new beginnings. The past would always be a part of my story, but it no longer dictated my future. With Maya by my side, I was ready to write the next chapter of my life. Together, we would create a narrative rich with experiences, laughter, and mutual respect, one that honored the lessons of the past while celebrating the beauty of the present. As we walked into the sunset, I knew my adventure was far from over. It was just beginning.